First, U.S. President Joe Biden today is due to announce the country's full withdrawal from Afghanistan, and this by September 11th. That, of course, is a highly symbolic date for the United States, as this year marks the 20th anniversary of the terror attacks that were coordinated from Afghanistan. Last year, the Trump administration made a deal with the Taliban that all U.S. troops would be gone by May in exchange for a promise that the group would not support al-Qaeda or other foreign militants. Now, Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Brussels today for talks with NATO. He says the alliance would work together with the U.S. to leave Afghanistan together.
After the United States was attacked on 9/11, together we went into Afghanistan to deal with those who attacked us and to make sure that Afghanistan would not again become a haven for terrorists who might attack any of us. And together we have achieved the goals that we set out to achieve. And now it is time to bring our forces home. We will work very closely together in the weeks and months ahead on a safe, deliberate, and coordinated withdrawal of our forces from Afghanistan. But even as we do that, our commitment to Afghanistan, to its future, will remain.
Well, to get more on Antony Blinken's comments today in Brussels, let's bring in France 24's Dave Keating. Dave, what more can you tell us about the announcements today?
Well, NATO countries have been waiting for this decision from the Biden administration for some time because there's been a big question mark over whether the Biden administration would also commit to that May 1st deadline in that peace deal that Trump made with the Taliban. We now know that the U.S. will not meet that May 1st deadline. That announcement is expected to be made official today. The U.S. will instead set a withdrawal date of September 11th, obviously a very symbolic date. That, of course, was effectively the day this war began 20 years ago. Of course, the U.S. and its NATO allies invaded Afghanistan because the Taliban government there at the time would not hunt down and turn over Osama bin Laden, the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. So this does give some clarity to NATO partners who were badly in need of clarity here. There's been some frustration here. Certainly over the past 4 years, there was major frustration with the Trump administration because they were not involving the NATO allies in this decision. Of course, it's historically a very big deal when a country makes peace arrangements with an adversary without consulting the allies with whom it entered that war in the first place. That is what Donald Trump did. So the Biden administration has been bending over backwards, coming here repeatedly to Brussels to say this is going to be a consultative decision and we will all go out together the way we came in, trying to make up for that faux pas, to put it mildly, by the Trump administration. And I heard from one official of a NATO country today that they see the September 11th date as being a good choice because it's symbolic of the end of the 9/11 era, an era that both people in the U.S. and Europeans would like to see the back of. It's an era when the U.S. was really focused on the war against terrorism. Above all else, it shifted geopolitical realities. It caused some kind of Cold War in some parts of the world, but now the U.S. is really shifting to focusing on traditional state adversaries like China and Russia. And of course, right now, we're very much in the COVID era. So the 9/11 era has been over for some years, and that pullout date on September 11th will be really symbolic. It'll make it official. The 9/11 era is over. Of course, the war itself, not many people would call a success, whatever Secretary Blinken said right there, because of course, we're probably going back to the exact same situation we started the war in, which is a Taliban government.
Dave, tell us a bit more about reaction there from NATO. Is everyone in the organization completely on board?
I think so. We've already seen a confirmation from the German defense minister that they will sync their pullout with the U.S. on that September 11th date. The Times newspaper in the U.K. is reporting that the U.K. will also sync their pullout from Afghanistan on September 11th. I think we will see a cascade of such announcements the rest of today. Effectively, it's really not possible for any NATO country to remain in Afghanistan without the U.S. there. They will likely like to see this as not just blindly following along the U.S. But of course, this was a collaborative effort. People do forget that. This was the first and only time Article 5 of the NATO treaty, the Mutual Defense Clause, has ever been invoked. After 9/11, the U.S. essentially demanded that its NATO partners invade Afghanistan with it, and everyone did do it. I think people forget that because they get clouded with the Iraq War that Germany and France did not participate in, and therefore it was not, and still is not, a NATO mission. But they all did participate. For the past 20 years, they've been fighting side by side with the United States, and so they're really going to want to collaborate on this exit. They're going to want to make this seem as much of a mutual decision as possible. But frankly, when the subject of Afghanistan comes up in this town, it is not a subject people enjoy talking about. It's not a subject that engenders positive feelings toward the U.S., I can tell you that. So I think both sides are eager to put this war behind them so the Biden administration can focus on reinvigorating and repairing transatlantic ties, which of course started to fray under George W. Bush because of these two wars. And this will really allow turning the page, getting out of the 9/11 era, and hopefully moving on in the relationship between the EU and the US. Of course, the Biden administration and Europeans saying more time needs to be taken to do this carefully so that you can minimize the damage to the Afghan people, which will undoubtedly be damaged by this move. But they want to minimize that as much as possible, and that means taking some extra months to coordinate this pullout.
Dave, thanks for that. France 24's Dave Keating there reporting from Brussels.